Hello and welcome to Rebecca Assimilates. So today we are going to be thinking about some things that we do when we first start writing that we shouldn't do really. We kind of look back at some of them and we're like, why did we even do that? So these things, 5 things, they're actually my 5 things that I did wrong when I first started writing, and I realised that other people, there were also problems for other people from when I went to writing groups and were reading other people's drafts, and I realised that wow, they're not just my problems, like a lot of writers have problems with these things, so I know they're real problems, and there's 5 of them, so I'm sharing in the hope that it might help you maybe. My rule number 1 for how not to write a novel would be avoid having characters that don't have any character. The temptation, because we know our characters, if they're in there, we know a lot about them. We've done character development. We know all there is about these characters. We know their background and their history. But we decided that a lot of that stuff, our readers don't need to know that. It's not relevant to the story. And then if we actually don't let the reader know enough to get them invested in this character, when things happen to this character, readers are just going to be like, yeah. And we do not want that to happen. We need them to have empathy for the characters. So we need to give enough so that, the readers, they're not going to get bored of the character and that the characters are still going to be like intriguing and interesting for them. But it's enough for that when things happen to these characters and their decisions push the plot along, it's going to be enough that readers are actually going to feel it with them. That's what we need. We need them to feel for our characters, or at least understand them, have empathy. So we must let our characters have character. And the best way that we can do this is for readers to see them in their natural environment before things happen. It's nice just to give them a few moments, just to see their true personality before all the action happens. Just so that there's a bit of an understanding. And I'm not just talking main characters or even secondary characters. I'm talking all characters that do something to the plot. Any characters that influence the plot in some way, your readers need to be a bit invested in them. They need to have something of them to start with. Otherwise, when things happen to them, they're not going to care that much, which will be quite sad, won't it? So let's get our characters having character. Point number 2, using words for situations, to describe situations and scenes, and trying to set a mood by using very on the nose, easy words that a lot of them end in the sound ly. So I'm talking happily, joyfully, glittery, soulfully, gingerly, shyly, spitefully, all of these words. I mean, yeah, they're quite good words. And the thing is, when we get taught at school how to write, these are the words they tell us to use. These are the words, the describing words. So we must all come together and, revolt against our conditioning and try not to use these words, because we want our readers, we want to give across a message that's not as broad as these words can give. We need to actually chisel it down to something a bit more specific. It's like that game, I forget what the game's called, but when you're all sitting around a table and one of you has a word on your head and you're not allowed to see the word and the other people aren't allowed to tell you what that word is, but they need to describe it in a way so you get that word. It's something that you eat, it's brown. So it's that kind of thing, but that's what you need to do when you describe scenes. You need to go for the not obvious words. You need to really get it out in your own way, using words that will help you sort of chip into place in a reader exactly how you want them to feel. Obviously, there are exceptions to this rule. I mean, there's authors out there that are doing quite well that do use these flowery words, and that is their choice. And also, if you look back in time, when they were first writing, they didn't do this, because to be able to break a rule and do it well, you need to be able to understand the rule first. You need to be able to stick to that rule and get it before you can break a rule. How not to write a novel. Point number 3, don't let your characters repeat thought in dialogue. So don't let a reader read a line that they're thinking, like if they're having a conversation with another character and that character says something to them and then they think about what they're going to say and then they say that exact thing. You don't want to be doing that, because it's just really boring for a reader to have to read that twice. And also, we never really say what we think anyway, so I don't know if it would be true. We need to think about how to get across. If you really need to get across something that a character is thinking, you could do it in a really subtle way in describing how they're moving, or like body positioning, facial expression, body language, anything. There are other ways to get it across. And the thing is, in conversations, in books, that's kind of like the action, you know, it's like bam, 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 bam. You want it. You don't want to get distracted by it with like thoughts. There are obviously occasions where this happens in books where, I mean, I've read a book where this has happened completely, and luckily the book had other things going for it that kept me reading, but I did have to read a lot of repeats of thoughts and then dialogue, and it was very boring. There are authors who do use thoughts before dialogue, and they actually do it in quite a clever way. They don't do it all the time, because doing it all the time would be boring. They'll do it because their characters are quite sneaky and they think things completely different to what they say, and it's usually quite humorous and sarcastic and entertaining. But as I said, I don't do it all the time, and it's another one of those things another one of those rules that you have to really understand before you can break. And as new writers, we don't repeat thought in dialogue. It's something we must try to avoid. Point for pondering number 4. Don't over-describe a scene or a place or a person or an event. No exposition dumping. It can be quite difficult because sometimes you feel like there's something that you do need to get out. But the thing is, readers are reading your fictional novels. They're not reading a documentary. They don't want to read that. Obviously, you need to give something. We must tease the reader and let them see that, you know, some of their questions are going to be answered eventually. You know, they're not just reading like lost in a wilderness and we're losing them. We need to keep them. But it's a careful balance. It's a very careful balance. And it's one that we all need to master quite well, really. Keeping readers reading by giving them enough, but not too much that they get bored, and not so little that they get lost. It's very important. And exposition dumping sometimes can't be avoided, but we need to find ways of breaking it up a little bit somehow, maybe with a bit of action. I don't know. It's something you're going to need to try and work out, but just try not to give too much description in one big lump, because it can be very boring for a reader. Point for pondering number 5. When you are writing your novels, do not worry about what other people will think in your first draft, because you are writing it for you. It can be so easy with the internet and blogs and websites to look at what other writers have done, other successful writers, and be really heavily influenced by what they're doing and feel like we're doing it wrong. And we can't do that. We really need to try to stick with what we're doing, because our novel is ours, and the first draft is ours. No one else is really going to see that, and we are getting our story out there. There's no point sort of writing a line and then thinking, oh, Stephen King wouldn't have done it like that. Or, you know, what will my mum say? You know, those are things that we don't need to be thinking about in our first draft. Don't think about what others will think. This is your story, baby, now. You must love it, because if you don't love it, it's going to be really boring writing it. You're not going to be motivated. People aren't going to enjoy reading it, because you can tell, you know, when things are written without love, you can tell. You need to get it out the way you want to at first, without thinking about what other people will think. And in future drafts, and when you get your book out there, that's it. It's too late then. It's not yours anymore. There's nothing you can do. But this first draft, at the very beginning, when you are first getting your story out there, that is yours, and you need to just cradle it and look after it and do it exactly how you want, and worry about it later. That's me for today. I would really like to know what you think of what I have said and my 5 things that I did wrong. And I have to say, some of them I'm still doing wrong now, because being a writer is really not easy. I'm not sure why we did this to ourselves. And yes, some of them I still am certainly having to struggle with and find ways around, and that's okay. And that's why we're doing this, in the hope that we can all help each other. So please comment below and tell me exactly what you do wrong. If any of these are your things, if you've been getting around them in a different way, let me know. I would really like to know. For now, have a very lovely writing day, and I will see you soon. Bye.